The guy, crossing his arms over his chest, asked people if they knew the place where they ended up. Answering, he said his name was Carl, and he was a mercenary. The man, lost in thought, said his name was Riley. He was a carpenter from Adola and knew nothing about where they were. Frightened, almost crying, the guy closed his eyes and replied that his name was Gia, and he had his own stall in Hia. He did not know how he ended up here. A girl named Jenna looked away with confusion and replied that she lived deep in the forest, and as it turned out, she did not know this place at all. With a confident face, one of the guys replied that his name was Shawn, and he was a farmer. He also added that he did not recall anything. Throughout the area, there were voices of people who talked to each other about how this was a dream, and they did not recall or know anything. The three guys looked at each other with unhappiness, listening to one reply that some magician transported them here for his tests. But Riley continued to think and replied that it was clear they were all residents of T, so they needed to keep comparing facts to understand at least something. A girl with joy in her eyes began to fly up to all the guys, asking what they were all doing and happily saying that the master had opened a gap in space and time, so everyone should prepare for battle. Two guys looked at the little fairy flying next to them with confusion. The man looked closely at the heroine, asking with surprise who she was, hearing in response from her that her name was Isil, and she was the guardian fairy of this place. So, it was better not to argue with her if someone did not want to get hurt. Carl approached the fairy with unhappiness, asking if she was the one who brought them here. But Isil did not want to explain anything, starting to take out her sword. The hero was unhappy that she had kidnapped them and was not explaining anything, so he decided to make her talk. Isil sighed and looked down, asking Carl to stop doing foolish things if he wanted to live. Grinding his teeth and showing his strength, the guy held the sword with unhappiness, shouting that she was too bold for such a small creature. Isil began to smile, asking the hero if this was his courage or stupidity. Running toward the fairy, he decided to teach her manners. Looking ahead in surprise, the hero froze in shock. Carl's head lay on the ground in blood, separate from his body. The system window showed that the guy was too excited and ended his own life. People looked at the hero in fear, listening to what the fairy replied, that she had warned him. The man opened his mouth wide in fear, hearing that Isil told them to listen. With wild eyes, the fairy looked at all the guys, replying that they should not try to raise a hand against her, since they would end up the same way. For her, it was just self-defense. Standing in the area, all the people ran in panic and did not believe that the hero was now dead. Isil looked away in surprise, seeing a system window in front of her which said that the group was formed, and now it was necessary to move the heroes to free slots. Looking up, the fairy understood with pleasure that the master decided to start. Looking around at all the people, Isil asked everyone to get ready. Being near the door, the fairy loudly shouted for the rift to open. The door began to slowly open, and a portal appeared. People looked at this in fear, not knowing what to do. With pleasure and a smile on her face, Isil pointed her finger at the portal, telling the people to go, so they would not repeat the fate of this mercenary. Someone stood next to the fairy, starting to call her. Shawn replied to Isil with unhappiness, asking the master to give them weapons so they could climb to the top of the tower, since they were 1 star and did not even have anything basic. Jenna looked at the guy with confusion, wondering what he was talking about and what tower he meant. Isil thoughtfully looked at Carl's dead body, realizing that Shawn was right after all. Starting to write something on the keyboard, the fairy asked the master if it was possible to give the heroes equipment. Riley looked at the guy with fear and surprise, asking him if he knew anything about this place. Shawn calmly replied that he had not been here for a very long time. Everyone looked at the system windows, which said that everyone was given a sword and a bow. Looking closely at Shawn, Jenna began to understand that she needed to prepare well. Pointing to the house, the hero shouted for everyone to go to the arsenal and take weapons, since they would soon begin. All the people looked after Shawn, asking what kind of battle it would be and what beginning everyone was talking about. Panic began in the area. Everyone was shouting that they could not fight anyone. There were many weapons in the arsenal. People began to take different equipment. A few seconds later, everyone came out of the arsenal with a full set. Isil, with a smile on her face, was next to the portal and, pointing her finger at it, shouted for the group to go forward. Someone's hand touched the portal. The heroes, afraid to go there, looked at it in surprise and heard the fairy shouting at them to go faster. Jenna looked in surprise as Shawn took a weak shield, deciding to team up with the guy. Approaching the hero, the girl looked at the guy, starting to ask him if he knew what was behind those gates and why they all needed weapons. Shawn sighed in unhappiness and looked at the floor, saying that there were too many questions. But they were all going to the arena to kill enemies, and the rest was not up to them. The heroes began to look at the system window, which said that one woman had already left their world. A few seconds later, the system window showed that almost everyone in the group of people had died. Shawn looked at this, replying that he did not expect anything else from 1 stars. Isil looked at the message with unhappiness, which said that one group had been destroyed. Shawn was surprised that it happened so quickly. Starting to get angry, the fairy heard the master asking the remaining heroes to move to free slots. Shawn understood that it was their turn, and the girl meanwhile was thinking why no one had returned from the portal. One of the men approached Isil in fear, asking her to spare him since arthritis had flared up. Jenna noticed how calm Shawn was. Taking the man by the clothes, the heroine shouted that they needed to go and unite to survive. As they went into the portal, the guys heard the fairy shouting to everyone that they could handle it. Their feet were standing on new ground. Jenna and the others looked around in surprise. Starting to explore, a group of people wondered where they were. There was something written on the wall at the top of the building. The door showed that this was the first floor of the main dungeon. Shawn looked ahead confidently, seeing that the system window said the gate was opening and they needed to get ready. So he began to shout to the guys not to panic. The light became brighter, moving the guys to a new world. Grass, a calm, peaceful sky. A group of people looked around in fear, seeing that they were in a field. The heroes asked with confusion where they were. Goblins began to run at the guys. Their levels were at the top, and the system window showed that the guys needed to destroy their enemies. Looking closely at the monsters, Shawn shouted for all the guys to fight together because if they did not fight, they would die. Seeing how the heroes ran back in fear, the guy did not know what to say to this. Jenna screamed loudly and looking to the side asked where the old man went. The system window showed that Jenna was feeling fear, so all her traits were reduced by 30%. The man continued to run quickly, loudly screaming that he felt better. 3 guys began to quickly run back. The system window showed that the heroes were feeling fear, so all their traits were reduced by 30%. Jenna looked away in fear, seeing how the guys crashed into the wall with confusion. The heroes saw they were standing near the wall, and they could not get out of this place. The man, knocking on the shield unhappily, asked to be let out. Looking back, Shawn mockingly called everyone weak cowards. Jenna looked at the guy in fear, starting to confidently look at Shawn. The girl asked him if they would be able to get out if they killed all these goblins. Looking forward, Shawn began to tell the girl that he would go into close combat and she would shoot back. Looking at the hero, Jenna asked what would happen to the rest of the group. Looking forward confidently, Shawn asked the girl not to think about it, since they were of no use. The goblins began to open their mouths wide. The monsters were quickly approaching the heroes. Running confidently forward, Shawn began to understand that he had never held a shield and sword in his hand. The monsters jumped on the main character, trying to kill him. Looking at the goblins, the guy replied that his name was Shawn, starting to fight the goblins. The guy and Jenna tried to defend themselves or escape from the monsters' attack. The main character knew that he had gotten into a game that depended only on luck. The door that opened the portal was firmly shut. The game Choose Me was starting on the phone. A large number of people played it. The aim of this game was to reach the 100th floor of the tower. Players began to craft items to boost and fortify the heroes and then develop strategies to clear each level. Until yesterday, Shawn was a regular person playing this game, sitting on the sofa. The hero held the phone in his hand and looked at the new event in the game, which was called the Paranormal Dungeon. Looking closely at the phone, Shawn realized that the highest rank in this game is 7 stars, and the guy has poor luck. Shawn opened thousands of cards, but never got 7 stars, despite the fact that everyone else already has them. Thinking, the hero realized that this game is different from its peers in its rather strict rules, and all the heroes have only one life. An important warning appeared. Holding the phone tightly in his hands, the hero did not understand why his players were scared. Seeing that each of them was experiencing fear, with a calm face looking at the game, Shawn saw how his fighter was feeling fear. Some boss of level 999 in the game began to destroy Shawn's players. Looking at the phone with confusion, the hero began to think that this was just some kind of system glitch. Watching the enemy with level 999, Shawn realized that his players died before he saw anything. A monster quickly leapt out of the phone, yelling to the guy that he found it. Shawn looked up in fear, not understanding what was happening because the game had just ended. Darkness fell. Bell, the system window, told the guy to create his account. A message came out of the darkness for Shawn to pick a name. A few seconds later, Shawn had already chosen a nickname in the game without pressing anything. The guy saw how the game worked for him. One of the system windows welcomed the guy into the game. Suddenly, a message appeared that asked Shawn if he would begin training, since after it, the hero would be able to receive a prize. The look gazed into the distance in fear. Standing with a sword in his hands, Shawn looked away in confusion, listening to the system window reply that in an ordinary town, there lived a guy named Shawn T. It is an area where people live together with other slaves. Showing the city's domain, the system window responded that an unknown enemy had attacked these peaceful lands, so the hero now needed to climb to the top of the tower if he wanted to save the world. The hand was gripping the corner of the wall. Shawn looked into the distance with a frightened face. A system window was shown in front of the hero, telling him to defeat the goblins that had invaded the city. With wild fear, the guy could not believe it, thinking that this was not real. The guy began to watch as the goblin jumped on him and began to understand that he did not have time to figure it out. Holding the sword, the guy, clenching his teeth, swung the weapon confidently. Looking forward, the hero fought the monsters with exhaustion. The hero continued to clench his teeth, closing his eyes, attacking the goblins. The guy swung his swords one after another, shouting loudly. The hero began to quickly swing his weapon at the monsters. The guy could not accept the fact that he personally killed another creature. Starting to leave tiredly, Shawn saw that the system window showed that the task was completed. The guy looked into the distance, surprised by the sight, seeing that he was standing in the square. The guy began to understand that he was in the game, Choose Me. Opening his mouth wide, the hero shouted, asking what was happening. Beginning to see the system window at the top, which showed the hero to call new players in the main menu, a door began to open in front of the guy, from which a bright light was shining. In one of the buildings, the silhouette of a new player appeared whom Shawn had summoned. Looking into the distance with confusion, the hero began to understand that she had been summoned. Looking at Shawn, Monica began to ask the guy who he was and whether he had called her. Heading toward the hero, Monica answered that she was a knight. After all this, the guys began to battle in the dungeon. Unlike Shawn, who had never held a sword in his hands before, the girl easily handled the goblins. The tired heroes began to watch the system window, which showed that the task was completed. Shawn looked at each other's stats, realizing that they had a big difference since Monica had 3 stars more. After a while, a system window began to appear for Shawn, which told him to click on synthesis. This is a way to improve the heroes. Clenching his teeth, the hero understood with frustration that he was done. Isil began to fly around Shawn, who pointed to the door and yelled at him to quickly climb. And while the master was waiting for him, the guy looked up in confusion. Looking at the fairy, the hero loudly asked her if her name was Isil. The girl looked at the player in surprise, asking him how he knew her. Shawn, standing near the fairy, answered his name, but from the face of the heroine looking at the player's cards, it was clear that there was no such name. The heroine looked at the card with frustration and shouted that he didn't look like a player at all. Shawn calmly asked to return him home, answering that he was Shawn from Seoul, not from Tanya. The fairy looked at the guy with an annoyed face. Having learned that he was from Earth, starting to fly up, the heroine shouted with frustration that he was going to go crazy since it couldn't be possible. Starting to argue, Shawn shouted to Isil that he wouldn't go there since he would die there. Without listening to anyone, the fairy sent the guy out the door, shouting at him to get inside. Monica, standing next to the guy, answered that he entered very loudly. His hands began to absorb magic. Shawn, looking at his body with fear, answered that it all began. Synthesis is when one of the heroes is used as a sacrifice to strengthen the other. One of the heroes is absorbed by the other. Looking away with frustration, the hero understood that Monica had 4 stars and he had 1, so no normal player would sacrifice the heroine for him. The knight stood quietly to the side, closing her eyes and lowering her head. Clenching his teeth, the hero closed his eyes in frustration, realizing that this was the end, and he would now be absorbed into the synthesis. A few seconds later, the hero looked in surprise at the system window, which said that the synthesis was complete. The knight began to vanish in a bright light. Hearing, Shawn asked her why she was disappearing. Lowering her head, the girl calmly answered that this was her fate and that a guy had been chosen. Smiling for the last time, Monica wished the hero good luck. A few seconds later, the guy was left standing completely alone. Looking forward, the hero could not understand what was happening. Geisha opened his mouth wide, Starting to scream loudly, Shawn, fighting with Jenna, shouted at the people not to be distracted and fight since the monsters would catch up with them if they ran away. Fighting monsters, the guy, clenching his teeth, understood that he survived. Confidently slaying goblins, the hero understood that synthesis is produced by merging heroes, and it is necessary to choose the one you want to combine, and then you need to drag. Looking away, Shawn unhappily understood that they were lucky that the master is so foolish, but the game is a mess. Jenna, running next to the guy, shouted that she killed one, but the second is not all. A few seconds later, the goblins bit Shawn's shoulder. With an annoyed face, the hero looked away and, clenching his teeth, understood that he did not know how he ended up inside this game, but one thing was clear for sure, that Shawn was summoned by a one-star hero. The shield, with all its strength, began to strike the goblin. Remembering the monster, the hero understood that this monster of level 999 looked into his eyes and left. Killing monsters, the hero understood that it could not be a coincidence, and that monster transferred him to this place. Seeing the monster in front of him, the guy began to understand that he messed with the wrong person. Jenna ran to the wounded guy, sitting in fear. Despite the girl, the guy answered that it would heal when they returned. Sitting on the field and holding the wound with his hand, the hero knew that players almost do not directly control the fight because the combat AI automatically conducts battles. And even so, the game gained 1 million downloads for one simple reason. Seeing the eye in the sky, Shawn understood that in this game there is an opportunity to watch this world like a god. Laughing, the guy looked up and asked the sky if he was having fun there. Starting to slowly get up, Shawn realized that he himself was exactly the same player, where he controlled the creation of items, tactics, upgrading heroes. Looking to the side, the guy understood that the master should see how he gets to the end. The system window displayed after a while. The prizes for this fight appeared. The card revealed the most valuable player, Shawn. Shawn and Jen's card was still glowing, which indicated that they were alive. While jogging, the hero realized that this is the realm of the game, and he landed in it as a one-star hero. 1 stars have no hope and are worthless. Continuing to jog, the hero understood that feeble traits and slow growth are useless to anyone, and such individuals will simply be discarded. Clenching his teeth, Shawn gazed into the distance, thinking that he had to grow stronger to endure and seek vengeance, then return home. To adjust, he was doomed and would be consumed if no one followed the rules of the game. Despite his exhaustion, the boy started doing push-ups. Observing the boy, Jenna asked him with confusion what he was doing. A few seconds later, Jenna looked at him quietly, starting to grab the bow. The heroine responded to the boy that she had been pondering all night about what to do next. Launching arrows, the heroine replied that she did not believe that anything would change if she just sat and wept. Wiping his face, Shawn asked the girl how skilled she was with a bow. Watching how the heroine shot a bow, Shawn understood that she had earned 4 points in traits yesterday, and despite the fact that she was weaker than him in this, she had talent, so Jenna had no issues slaying goblins in her first fight. Looking at the heroine, the boy understood that she quickly bounced back from the loss of others, and at the same time knew how to set clear objectives, so he agreed to assist her. A hand was offered. Jenna, with a grin on her face, extended her hand to the boy, replying that her father said that having allies is a very important part of life. The hero glanced at his hand out of the corner of his eye, having offered his hand to the girl in return. The system window indicated that the 2 heroes had gained a relationship bonus. Suddenly, the hero began to look around, loudly summoning Isil. Having flown in with annoyance, the fairy yelled that she was occupied. Looking angrily at the boy, Isil replied that she would not respond to the boy's questions, and if he needed something, he had to climb the tower. With surprise, the heroine heard Shawn asking her about the fact that only he could see pop-up messages. Looking away, the heroine brushed off the question, replying that she did not grasp what he was talking about. Shawn looked at the fairy and said that she was level 257. Glancing briefly at Isil, the boy began to understand that everything was obvious from her reaction, and that only he could view the system messages directed to the master. With curiosity, the hero began to ask Isil what would happen if the master abandoned the game. Thinking, Shawn began to realize that the fusion of him and Monica was a fairly grave error, since he drained a 4-star player and squandered such a valuable character by selecting him. The hero knew that the account had a strong link to the phone, and it would not be possible to restart. Also, the last time the master entered the game was only a week later. With interest, The hero approached the fairy closer, asking her if the passage of time here differs from the earthly one. Standing next to Jenna, he began to reply that they need to pass through 100 floors of the tower. Looking at the girl, the boy waved his hands, replying that the creature called the Master gives them commands through Isil, and they must execute these tasks. But with all this, they will be able to escape if they reach the top. So they need to practice a lot to become much stronger. Approaching the boy, the heroine asked about the fact that they will be only two, to which Shawn replied that the Master can summon other heroes, so they are unlikely to be alone. Shawn knew that now every choice must be made cautiously. Standing in the square, the boy understood that their lives still remain in the hands of the Master. After a whole day of training on such a vast territory, the boy learned another fascinating ability of this world. Being in the house, Shawn understood that all the necessities and food are refreshed every day, and you can also obtain other items, and for this, it is enough to imagine it, and it will appear by the fireplace or in the closet. But with all this, with game items, weapons, or money, this will not work. As he continued to practice and gain experience, Shawn realized that the outcomes of training were also different, as he was now learning techniques that he had no clue about when he played himself. For example, among the 1-stars there were more gifted ones. Looking away, the boy realized that their quality was hard work, and despite the fact that training did not boost the traits or level, they helped to acquire and develop new abilities. Seeing battles, the Master would sort the heroes by 3 standards. The first was resilience, since the Master did not need heroes who tended to panic on the battlefield. Remembering Monica, the second standard was expertise, since high-ranking heroes were already summoned with abilities, and 1-stars required hard effort to unlock them. Continuing to jog, Shawn realized that the third standard would be physical fitness, which was the final point that the boy was working on. On the 3rd day of training, the Master entered the game. Looking into the distance, Shawn replied to Jenna, who was here. The hero understood that he had gained 2 skills, and for now, with a grin on her face, Isil looked at the guys one last time, telling everyone to enjoy themselves. A group of people stood in the shield, seeing the system window that said that they were on the 2nd floor. Confidently looking at Jenna, Shawn, not noticing the scared people, asked the girl if she was ready. Evil creatures began to roam around the territory, which began to approach the guys. 3 new guys with tears and fear in their eyes wondered what it was. Shawn looked at them with annoyance. Looking at Jenna, it was clear from the system window that she was also feeling fear, which is why her traits were reduced by 30%. Having struck the heroine with his shield with all his might, the boy asked her if she had eaten enough porridge. Looking at the dissatisfied and angry Jenna, Shawn replied that 2 goblins were on her and he would handle the wolves himself. The protagonist glanced at the newcomers out of the corner of his eye, realizing that they would be of no use to him. The wolves quickly attacked the boy. The mouth began to open wide. Opening his mouth wide, the hero quickly ran at the wolves, screaming loudly. The sword plunged into the wolf's mouth, passing through the beast's muzzle. Looking up with pleasure, Shawn understood that the weapon was poor and 1 blow was not enough. His hand began to spin, swinging the weapon in different directions at the wolves. Shawn looked into the distance, realizing that this would be enough for him. After a while, the sword slayed the last wolf, slicing off its head. The look turned away with fury. With swift motions, Shawn placed his shield in the jaws of the wolf that aimed to assault the hero. Shawn glared at the beast with annoyance, clenching his teeth. On the other side, a new wolf leaped at the hero, attempting to strike. Filled with vigor, Shawn quickly dashed at the wolf, swinging his blade. With the aid of a sword hit, blood started to spill across the area. The hero stared ahead with irritation, grinding his teeth. Peering into the distance, the hero inquired about what was happening with the goblins. All the creatures had weapons. Approaching the goblins, the lad questioned the lass in surprise about how many times she had fired at them. The heroes gazed wearily at the monsters, understanding that they were all already dead. The hero stood in a flow of energy, seeing a system panel above that stated the floor was secured. Shawn and Jenna started to depart, and the 3 heroes quietly trailed them. The ground began to tremble. Jenna asked in terror what was occurring, to which Shawn responded that they had conquered the 2nd floor and were now ascending to the 3rd. The hero observed the 3 players, realizing that the leader would always advance. Looking into the distance, Shawn began to ponder what would happen next and whether they would instantly clear the 3rd floor. Sighing, Shawn noticed the system screen, which showed that the leader had exited the game. Isil was hauling herself up, loudly yelling that she was very exhausted. Turning to the portal, Shawn started to comprehend that they were clearing one floor per day, and if time was 3 times faster here, then the leader would return in 3 days. Storing the shield in the inventory, the hero began to grasp that his wisdom had dropped by 1, but strength had risen by 2 points. Character had increased by 4, and the leveling speed had also improved. This meant that Shawn had become mightier. The hero, not noticing how the 3 lads were shouting at Jenna, thought that the leader was in no rush because they would have faced issues if they constantly went straight up. Looking at the players, the lad realized that 1-star heroes were common folks who had never been to battle and had never fought. Recalling Carl, the hero understood why they were considered disposable. Starting to think about Monica and her fights, Shawn realized that high-ranking heroes do not waver in combat, unlike 1-star ones who panic. Looking at Jenna, the hero thought that Monica probably knew something. The heroine stood beside the lad, suggesting he try to clarify everything to the guys. Shawn glared at Jenna with annoyance, asking her why waste time on this. The heroine looked at the lads, realizing that if they explained everything, the heroes could understand it all, and then become their partners. The main character watched the trio, replying that they would soon perish, so he would see how everything progresses further. Looking at the lads, the hero understood that they were simply combining, so he began to tell them not to stall, since they would battle together. The lad's gaze was carefully watching the lass as he left. Shawn told Jenna that he was not going to squander his time on her. Toby grabbed the lad's clothes tightly. With quick motions, Shawn turned and struck the hero in the face. Looking down at Toby, the lad replied that they were hiding behind their backs while they fought. Glancing at Jenna, Shawn asked the lass if she was pleased now. The next day, the lads continued practicing, starting to spar with the scarecrow. Shawn understood that after physical training, weapon training began. It was hard to call it any special practice since the hero simply swung a wooden sword, and Jenna shot a bow. The trio did not appear for training. They acted as if they had found an escape from this place. Jenna confidently began to fire a bow. The lad swung his sword with swift motions, clenching his teeth. The hero started to look at his leg, which had an arrow in it. Scared, Jenna ran up to the lad, asking if he was okay. The wound began to heal slowly, and the lad replied that this place was different from the real world, so everything recovered quickly. Continuing to fight, the hero yelled for everyone to begin. Shawn understood that pain was not an issue for him because it meant he was still alive. Arrows began to swiftly pierce the shield. The system panel showed that the leader was back in the game. Isil looked at all the lads, loudly shouting for them to assemble in the square. Jenna looked ahead with assurance and began to warm up, saying that her hands were eager after training. Shawn was surprised that the lass was adapting to the new world so quickly. The 3 lads began to look at the fairy with annoyance, asking to return them home. The fairy began to slowly lose her patience, quickly tossing the heroes up. Isil yelled at them that they were irritating her. Shawn and Jenna stood aside, watching the fairy handle the 3 lads. The beaten heroes stood silently, listening to Isil shouting at them to go inside. The system panel showed that the 3rd floor had started. New monsters were already prepared for battle. Taking a stance, Shawn confidently told the lass that their strength and skills had advanced, and now they should act like in practice. A few seconds later, the lad quickly ran at the goblins, slowly slaying everyone. Standing together with the lass and looking at each other, the hero replied that it was very dull. Jenna began to look at the 3 with irritation, saying that they were just standing again. Looking up, Shawn saw advice that said to send the disobedient fighters for a new passage. Jenna looked at Shawn, realizing that it was too early for them to relax. The heroes appeared on the 1st floor again. Looking around, Jenna realized that everything was not so bad. Looking at the monster, the lads realized that they did not change. Jenna held a bow with a grin on her face and killed the last creatures. Looking up, Shawn again saw that the leader wanted to go through the 1st floor. The lass and the hero went through the floors one by one, slaying all the creatures and receiving rewards for this. Barely standing on her feet, Jenna looked at the lad with annoyance, hoping that they would not be sent to fight again. After a while, the heroes emerged from the rift. Jenna walked ahead with Shawn, saying that she was tired of guarding them. Shawn calmly walked forward, stating that the leader did not want to deal with pests. In the middle, a building confidently stood. The doors opened, and the system panel responded that the combining process had been launched. The 3 heroes looked at this with confusion, wondering what it was. Shawn looked at the lads, seeing that the system panel asked the leader to drag the heroes to sacrifice some. Watching the players, Shawn realized that they never seized the opportunity. The map showed all the places of the game, pinpointing where the players were at different times of the day. Open gates appeared in front of them. The hero, gazing straight ahead, believes they had an opportunity, perhaps even several. Picturing the match in his mind, he keeps thinking that, though most small details aren't displayed on the monitor, the leader still has a broad grasp of what's occurring in the game. He knows about the successes of the champions, sees who is battling whom. In the fusion chamber, to which Shawn responded that all is well, nothing will harm her, the person behind him, reaching out his arm, asked what would occur if they ventured there, to which Shawn answered that he will receive what he earns. A moment later, the person, opening his jaws wide, yelled that he was pulled here against his wishes. The hero, spinning around, responded that nobody cares about his view, and the sprite added that for once, she agreed with his statement. Looking at the scared person, Shawn went on to say that he thought he would always cower behind others' backs. He doesn't know how to brawl, but it was sufficient to at least attempt. The sprite added that everyone was already weary of dealing with them, so let him crawl inside. Suddenly the gate slammed shut. A system notice appeared about the beginning of synthesis. The person, opening his mouth in terror, screamed to be released. How could they do this? Abruptly, the room was engulfed in blue flames. After a while, the girl with red locks emerged from there. The fusion was finished. Looking forward, she asked what happened because that person just vanished. The hero, staring at her, replied that they eliminate useless champions here. Now it's his turn. Looking at the fellows behind him, he asked curiously which of them will get to discover it. Then the sprite, pointing her finger, shouted for them to proceed. The fellow looked ahead in fear, growing pale. The hero stood still, bowing his head. Then the fellow, entering inside, chuckled and shouted that they were sending him home. That's correct. He will finally return. To which Shawn, lowering his head, answered that he can trust in what he wishes. After a while, a system notice appeared that the synthesis was done and the player disappeared in a bright glow. The hero also completed the fusion. He boosted his rank and gained the ability of calmness. Then, passing by the fellow, he said that he was fortunate. The girl turned around and asked that if the leader decided that he no longer needed the champions, he would simply vanish into this chamber. The hero asked what she was shocked about. She herself had grumbled that she was already tired of them. Her body trembled, and she asked what if she would also become unneeded. Turning around, Shawn answered that there was nothing to be done about it. With each level, the beast and champion that the leader called would become mightier. They would either perish in combat or during fusion. The girl, bowing her head, answered that she understood, and apparently Shawn knew about it from the very start. The hero, looking in her direction, answered that she should heed better to what her father told her. She silently glanced away, and Shawn continued to say that staying with the right folks was the best answer. We are moved to the next day. The girl, lowering her head, yells that she is relying on him, to which the hero replies, "What's the purpose?" Dropping her hands, she answered that he had said that if she stayed with him, it would protect her life, and so she wanted to make it clear that she would now be able to depend on him. Shawn looked at her with annoyance, answering that she should do as they say, then she cannot fret about her life. Someone, clenching his fist, pleaded to be allowed to join. The tall fellow, looking ahead with fear, said in a shaky voice that he acted very foolishly. He added so much trouble to them and realizes that he was a coward, did nothing, and left all the fighting to them. Now he wants to improve. Hearing this, the hero asked with irritation why he should believe him, to which his speaker, bowing his head, answered that he can kneel if he is pardoned. And the girl replied that it seems he understood his plight. The hero grabbed a stick, asked if he had ever fought creatures. At first he did not know how to do anything at all, after which he tossed his comrade's wooden blade and he answered that he fights so well. Shawn said that he is just trying to endure. Looking at his follower, he added that he should grab the lance. He was not certain, but he heard that for a novice it was the simplest weapon to learn. He would work with it. He just knew the tactic of medium and long-range combat. The girl grinned, crossed her arms, and said that she knew the close sword, medium lance, long bow. Now they would have all roles covered. Taking the blade in his hands, he answered that for 3 members without training, this would be the best mix. Frowning, he continued to say that what was he waiting for? Let him prepare for battle. The fellow, looking ahead in fear, answered that first, shouldn't he be taught at least something? Shawn zoomed up to his comrade at great speed, shouting that as if he could, he himself had never held a lance in his hands. He was learning on the fly, so let him copy after him. After that, he delivered a huge number of strikes, adding that at least he had a sparring partner. He only had a dummy. The fellow clenched his teeth in fear. Then he shut his eyes and swung the lance. At that moment, Shawn kicked him, telling him not to close his eyes in the middle of the skirmish. The fellow winced in pain. He grabbed his belly. Looking at him, the hero answered that he actually gave in. That's all he could do. The creature would have slain him long ago. The girl, standing behind, asked if this was his first time, didn't he overdo it? To which Shawn replied that he didn't care and didn't need dead weight. He wouldn't squander time on someone who was incapable of anything. Approaching his sparring partner, he asked if he had a family, to which he answered that his little sister was waiting for him. Then the hero said that at least that was something. He had no one at all. He brought the wooden blade to the throat of his new ally, looking at him fiercely. He told him to picture what would happen to her if he never returned. The fellow's face turned pale, and Shawn continued to say that if he was going to perish, then it would be better if he didn't go near the creatures. They would be ripped apart. Synthesis is not so painful. Let him start what he can't manage. Hearing this, the fellow clenched his teeth in anger. Watching this, Shawn grinned. Looking at his friend, he added that he already liked this expression. We are moved to the house. 2 system notices appear that the hero has chosen to build an extra structure, the armory. The forge, 500 gems were spent on its creation. Looking around, Shawn said that this is already better. Now the forge is open to them. Looking ahead, he continued to talk. The sprite hears him, then let her come to him. Flying up, she answered grumpily that who is he to give her commands? To which the hero replied that she should think up something new. He was already weary of such replies. The sprite, angry, began to strike him with her fists, and the hero calmly answered that she was the one who shaped the message with answers. They looked like posts from the game forum. She could go online. Crossing her arms grumpily, the sprite answered that she could. She browses a little in her free time. Then Shawn said that she had access to a forum with tactics. First the training hub, then 10 weapons, then the forge. Hearing this, the sprite asked with irritation how he knew this, to which the hero replied that why shouldn't he know? One of the most famous posts on the forum written by Loki. His speaker asked that he even knew about it, and Shawn said that of course he was also a gamer. The sprite, smiling, continued to say that now he is a low-tier character on the lower levels, and Mr. Loki, the expert of all experts, the deity of this game. He would surely be in first place if he gained at least one 7-star champion. Smiling, the hero asked what she admired about him, to which the girl answered that he can make the unthinkable possible. Then, stretching out her arms, she flew away, saying that he is splendid. Suddenly, she halted when Shawn apologized to her. She asked in shock what he was talking about. The hero, looking fiercely in front of him, answered that he is Loki. A list of building upgrades appears before us, after which the fairy flew away and screamed that this was some kind of silly joke. Looking at her, Shawn said that the account number was 46x31-900. Frowning, he continued to say that to prevent hacking, the game account number is known only to the owner and managers of the server. She can check or tell him another email. The fairy entered the account number and then replied that this was serious, this can't be. After which she lowered her head, and then her cheeks turned red and she shouted for him to quickly give her an autograph. She will be the coolest in the fan club. After signing, Shawn asked, annoyed, what she was talking about, to which the girl replied that the fan club of Loki, the master of all masters, she will become a top-level member if she gets an autograph. The protagonist, looking menacingly ahead, answered that he had never heard of it. The fairy's body shook, and she, in a trembling voice, said that she had really said so much to the real Loki. Signing, the protagonist said that, okay, he was now a 1-star hero, who cared? Suddenly the fairy screamed for him to stop. What would happen to the settlement without him? To which Shawn replied that he had no idea. We are transferred to the settlement, 30 floors of a huge fortress, capacity for 20,000 people. Most of the buildings there are upgraded to level 22, huge effort. But so what? He is the dungeon master now. The girl, frightened, looking ahead, asked what would happen to all the residents, to which the protagonist replied that she should disband the settlement if she was worried about them. Her face turned pale, and she replied that she couldn't, to which the protagonist replied that he knew she was just a mid-level moderator who handled all sorts of small tasks. He tilted his head and added that the master of this account was also a person from Earth, and the heroes who were summoned here were not AI at all. The fairy replied that they came from different worlds, but they were all real people. Introducing the creator, she added that he didn't know about it. He was just a player who liked to play. For him, the heroes were just tools who could be exposed to any danger. Hearing this, Shawn looked away with displeasure, asking if he would be able to return home if he climbed to the top. Yeah, I don't know. After which the protagonist, frowning, said that he would then ask another question. Who placed him here? The girl replied that she couldn't say that. While she was climbing, he folded his hands and asked what access and powers she had. The fairy said that she could give the master advice, open and close buildings, help in choosing something. Shawn, imagining the settlement, asked if the cities of other masters looked the same. The fairy answered that there was some difference, but in general, yes. The protagonist frowned and imagined a huge number of islands, thinking that there were 1,000,000 such worlds. An image of heroes appeared in his head, and he thought that the summoning system for creating an infinite number of heroes with thousands of different combinations of skills turned out to be a lie. Quantum artificial intelligence was a lie. The heroes were not advanced machines but real people. The system, endless content options, in fact, 1,000,000 different worlds. Pressing a button on his phone, he thought that what was happening in the game was real. His careless actions in the past doomed many people to death, after which the protagonist called the fairy with annoyance. Looking at her, he told her to listen to him if she wanted to climb up. We are transported to the mannequin. The girl swings her blade. Looking at her, Shawn thinks that she is just a genius. She is growing at a speed that is unreachable to other heroes of her level. For the first time, she holds a dagger, but she got the hang of it so quickly. Looking at the tall guy who barely repels attacks, the protagonist thinks that with such success as his, he will die on the battlefield. Pointing a finger back, she said that she gave in, but it did not really help, to which the protagonist replied that she should not get arrogant. They need to go. The girl asked what happened. Is he really not going to train his #1 assistant? Suddenly, a fairy appeared who loudly shouted in annoyance. How dare she address him like that? She is #1. The fairy continued to shout happily, but suddenly Shawn grabbed her, answering that it is not time for her to work. Even in her hand, she shouted that, in any case, she is the first assistant. The protagonist, looking at her, thought that maybe he should not tell her about this. Then he went to the warehouse, asking the fairy to open it. They went inside. A message that Shawn found iron, leather, and boards in the warehouse. They went outside. The protagonist asked the fairy to open the forge, and the girl took the cart, asked what he was planning. Shawn replied that he will not forever wield such an average sword. Looking at the forge, he thought that from the conversation, he understood that he is half a hero and half a master. Approaching the furnace, he continued to think about whether he would be able to enter areas accessible only to masters. A fairy flew up, asking what he would create, a leviathan or a brunk. To which the protagonist replied that in such a place, a system message appeared that there was no building upgrade grade, a penalty was imposed, there was no master blacksmith and another penalty, and no blueprint. The chance of success was awful. Did he want to start creating? The fairy, looking at the furnace, asked what he wanted to create, an item? Shawn replied something like that. A system message appeared that he needed to choose a difficulty level. The higher the level, the higher the possible reward. The protagonist replied that he needed extreme hell. Hearing this, the fairy jumped to the side, shouting at extreme hell, there are triple penalties, to which Shawn calmly replied that she should just watch. Looking at the creation of the sword, he replied that this is a minimum for masters. It is usually skipped, although the rewards are solid. A system message appeared in front of him that he has 3 minutes. The fairy shouted that she can't even understand the shape. The protagonist, stretching his hand forward, grabbed a small cube. Lowering his head, he said that it is not a problem for him. Then his friend's face, Shawn, and she shouted that this is the legendary movement of 1,000 hands. Shawn began to grab cubes at great speed. A system message appeared in front of him that he achieved absolute success and created a cunning longsword. The fairy beamed with joy, looking at the protagonist's work. A system message appeared in front of him that the cunning longsword is sturdy, light, and sharp. Average materials are skillfully combined. The protagonist continued to rearrange the cubes at great speed. Artifacts and system messages appeared in front of him, which said that he created a balanced short bow, a sharp long spear, and a strong iron shield. Pulling it into his hands, he said that it was only C rank. The quality of the materials was telling, to which the fairy replied that he would not do it anymore. The protagonist said that it could attract attention, and he did not need the masters to guess anything. We are transported to the forest. The girl, looking menacingly ahead, releases an arrow at great speed. One accurate hit, and her enemy falls to the ground. We are on the 4th floor. On it, it is necessary to destroy all the enemies. The girl, smiling, looks at her new weapon, saying that the tension is much stronger. Such a bow will definitely not want to steal. Shawn, looking menacingly ahead, answered that she should use the personal weapon function so that this does not happen. Several monsters appear in front of them, and the protagonist continues to say that the master is so strange, sent them to fight 3 of them. They need to deal with the harpies. The heroes lined up. The guy began to wave his spear to destroy the enemy. Shawn, gritting his teeth, blocked the monster's attack. A system message appeared in front of him that his ally was experiencing fear, and all stats were reduced by 30%, after which he said that he was too chaotic. Then, as his comrade swung the blade of the computer at the harpy, after a few seconds the girl hit him in the face, shouting for him to pull himself together. The guy looked at the blood flowing from his nose in fear, and she shouted for him to understand what was at stake in his life. The protagonist, dashing forward at the monster, added that he should pull himself together, to which the guy, stretching out his spear, replied that he understood. All 3 of them attacked the monsters at the same time. A system message appeared in front of them that this floor was cleared. Their reward was 10,000 gold, iron ore, and leather. The guy tried to catch his breath, looking down. Raising his eyes, he said that again he was just in the way. What will happen to him now? A system message appeared that he had been added to favorites. Raising his head, Shawn said that he would live for now. The master had added him to his favorites. Hearing this, the guy opened his mouth wide and, clenching his fists, shouted that he had done it. Bending over, she looked at the protagonist, saying that first his first subordinate had succeeded, now the second one had succeeded, to which Shawn replied that he had no subordinates. After which, he headed to the warehouse. Looking down, he thought that his first subordinate would most likely be his old girlfriend. Several cards were in his mind, and he thought that a group of 5 people, 6-star heroes of the 99th level, each with their own divine and other powerful skills, maybe he could still meet them. Remembering his city, he continued to think that this is a tough game. The Vice Master will cope with the management quite well, especially since she is insured. They are both so smart that even he sometimes wonders if this is really AI. A tower appeared in his mind, and he continued to think that now he realized that these were real people. We are transported to the tower. The girl, looking at her friend, asks if she is really leaving. She answers something that now every minute is important. The girl in white clothes answers that she cannot help in any way and leaves the research to her. After a few seconds of silence, looking at her leaving friend, she adds that she hopes that she will be able to find the master. A system message appeared in front of the house that its living area was upgraded to level 2 and the limit of heroes of the settlement increased. A new interior appeared inside, and a system message appeared that the dining room of the living area was completed. The heroes will be able to receive higher quality meals. We are transported to the training ground. The system message informs that the training area has been upgraded to the 2nd level. The effectiveness of training has been increased. Then we appear near a small building. The message says that 3 structures of the arsenal, a forge, a carpenter's workshop, and a metalworking workshop, have formed a common building, an equipment workshop. The territory of the settlement began to increase to the 2nd level. The girl watched this in surprise, opening her mouth. She asked what was happening, and the guy added that this master is really a great wizard. How is this even possible? The protagonist, looking around, replied that he simply invested money. It seems he liked the game. Looking at the new structure, he thought that the lively behavior of the heroes and the realism of the battles. He thinks it's all about the feeling that the characters are real people, not pictures, but in fact they are real people. After which, he said that the higher they climb, the better the conditions will be. Looking towards the ferry, he added that the user plays at a strictly defined time, apparently an office worker. It seems that he not only explores the game but also donates. His girlfriend replied that they were lucky that it was not some poor student. He had enough money to buy a set for 65,000. Smiling, Shawn lowered his head, thinking that, unlike other games, this does not reward the player with crystals for winning quests at all, and other ways to earn them in the game are few and far between, after which he said that it was great luck to meet a player who was willing to spend real money. Then he looked up in fear. A system message appeared that the master was summoning 10 new heroes. The portal lit up. The guy turned around and asked if this was really a summoning, to which the protagonist replied that the renovation was finished. It was time to celebrate. The housewarming Shawn imagined the cards in his mind, thinking about the fact that there are two ways to summon, summoning for in-game gold and advanced summoning for crystals. Naturally, the second method is much more effective. You have to somehow force players to spend real money. A crowd of surprised people appeared in front of the gate. The old man looked around and asked what was going on. He was home a second ago. The protagonist listened to the disgruntled conversations. In his eyes, suddenly he pointed his sword at the old man, and he asked in fear who they were. Shawn, looking menacingly ahead, told them to shut up. No one would explain anything now. First, they needed to survive. Whoever remained, they would explain. The fairy, stretching her hand out to the side, shouted for them to pay attention to her. Are there any carpenters here? If so, let them go there. Looking at the frightened crowd, she added that they needed a blacksmith or another metal worker. What about cooks? People continued to be indignant. The girl watching this asked what she was doing, to which the protagonist, closing his eyes, replied that she was distributing roles. They had new vacancies. The fairy, stretching her finger to the side, continued to tell something to the people, and the protagonist, looking at her, replied that if the people who had died earlier were called now, their fate would have been different. This settlement is starting to change. A pumped-up city appears in front of us.